You're still under oath, sir?
That's correct, my lady.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Nell?
May it please the court, my lady. Captain Mangena, yesterday we dealt with the fact that you examined the door in your office.
That's correct, my lady.
We dealt with the fact that you were at the crime scene,
That's correct, my lady.
that you had access to post-mortem photographs,
That's correct, my lady.
that you also had access to the measurements of the accused in this matter.
That's correct, my lady.
Then in paragraph 18, we deal with the opinions and conclusions that you've drawn from everything that you had to look at.
That's correct, my lady. I did that.
And your opinion in paragraph 18.1 was what?
My lady, 18.1, my opinion was there's 4 shots fired at the crime scene. And all 4 bullets perforated the toilet door into the toilet cubicle.
And one hit somewhere.
Right. What I could do is, when I do crime scene reconstruction, I relate the body of the deceased with the crime scene. Because if we do the crime scene, you cannot relate the crime scene to the body. You can relate the body to the crime scene because the bullet holes on the crime scene are fixed and they cannot change the position, they cannot change the height. Now, if you take a human being, the human being can change positions, can get to any position, can get to. Now, I've tried different positions to place the deceased in the toilet cubicle to determine which position could have been when this bullet hits her. Now, I tried in the position where she's seated on the toilet seat, but the wound on the hip is too low for that. Now, came to the conclusion that most probably the wound on the hip was when she was in a standing position between the door and the toilet seat. And it's most likely to be from bullet hole mark A on the door.
Now, if that is so, the measurements as far as the bullet hole is concerned and the wound on the body was what?
My lady, I looked at the measurements on the bullet, and on the bullet door, the measurements were 93.5, and the measurement from the heel of the deceased to the wound on the hip was 93 centimeters. And not forgetting that the trajectory that it could determine was between 5 and 6 degrees downwards.
If that is so, Captain, if bullet hole A caused the wound on the hip, what was the position of the deceased in terms of the door?
In terms of the door, my lady, she was standing in front of the door, facing the door.
And in your reconstruction, what then?
Now, from this wound, my lady, I looked at the post-mortem report, and I looked at this wound, how this wound was inflicted. Now, according to my consultation, that bullet penetrated and broke the hip bone of the deceased. Now, with this wound, if the bone is the hip bone is broken completely, it causes her to fall down from this, because this leg will not be able to stand up. Now, in this position, it gave me the impression that from that position, she fell down. And falling down, she moved backward. Now, that's where I could determine the importance of the magazine rack on the crime scene. If she fell down completely to the floor, she would be too low. The wound on the arm and the wound on the head would be too low to be in line with the bullet holes on the door. But if she's positioned on top of the magazine rack, it brings her position, the body and the position of the wounds in line with the bullet holes on the door.
So your opinion is,
So
after the bullet hole, after the infliction of the wound A, what happened to the deceased?
After the infliction of the wound mark, the wound on the hip, she fell down on top of the magazine rack in a seated position, and most probably the shot mark B, or the bullet hole, bullet that penetrated on bullet hole mark B, was shot, and the bullet missed her, ricochet on bullet hole mark E on the wall, deflected to the bullet hole mark F on the other one, and it broke into fragments. Then the fragments that came from this bullet hit her on the back, creating the bruises on her back. And those bullet fragments are the ones which are marked, I think, B4 on the crime scene.
Let us just do that. We won't follow everything on the screen, but let's just indicate to the court. If you go to your report, page 45, we're dealing with this particular one.
Page 45.
Of your report. It's photo 57.
That's correct, ma'am. This is the wound that I'm referring to as the first wound that was inflicted.
And you indicated that, in your opinion, it ricocheted at E, it hit the wall at F, and caused an injury to the deceased, which was visible during the post-mortem. Would you please page to 48 in your report?
That's correct, my lady. And this one, my lady, if you can look at photograph number 31 on page 25 of the report, as shown on the laser, which is
What
441.
page? What page is that?
It's 440. Page 25.
25 of 54, my lady.
Thank you.
Is that the photograph on the screen now that you want to refer to?
That's correct, my lady. The shot missed her, ricocheted on the wall at Mark E, then deflected to Mark F on the wall, and it broke into fragments. By then, she was in a seated position with her back towards the wall. It deflected there, then the fragments came back, hit her at the back, creating the. By then, this bullet has lost a lot of energy and a lot of speed, so it couldn't penetrate the body of the deceased.
Then, and so we've now dealt with bullet hole A, we've dealt with bullet hole B.
That's correct, my lady.
Then there are two more bullet holes.
Right. The two more bullets, I couldn't determine which one was fired first, which one was fired the last. But in this instance, the deceased was most probably seated in a defensive position, whereby it could be something like in this position. How do I determine that? We look at the entrance wound on the side of it, and then the exit is on the inside part. Now, when you look at the exit of the wound, it's huge, and most of the body tissue from the arm have been transferred to the vest that she was wearing here. And the damage that's on the vest is from the bullet fragments that perforated the arm, damaged the vest, and caused the bruises on the chest.
So you lined up the entrance wound, the exit wound, and the wounds on the chest.
Wound on the chest, that's correct, my lady.
And that would indicate that that her arm was lifted up.
The arm was lifted up and was in front of the chest.
Now let us just deal with that. Can we just go to photograph 45 at page 37? At page 37.
Yes, I've got it, my lady.
Now, on photograph 45, the magazine rack is visible there.
Yes.
Is that what you referred to? Where, in your opinion, that is there? We go.
That's correct, my lady. That's the magazine rack I'm referring to.
And the arm that we're dealing with, that's the right arm.
That's correct, my lady. That's the right arm.
Now we've dealt with 3 shots. Then we have one more shot.
Yes, my lady. If you look at the position that I'm referring to as the defensive position, It's like if you see in its position, the wound on the left hand, just between the two fingers, bullet perforated here, but the arm was now in contact with her, and she was a bit facing down. It comes in here. It also penetrated the head of the deceased.
For purposes of the record, my lady, I will have to try and put this in words.
Yes, yes.
Captain, you've got both your hands on your head, head
That's
bowed
correct, my
forward, with the left and right hand crossing on top of her head.
That's correct, my lady.
That's the best I can do. And so, that would then also explain the wound to the head.
That's correct, my lady. Also explained the wound to the head. On impact, this bullet, on impact with the skull, the bullet broke into two fragments. One fragment penetrated the skull, was removed during post-mortem, and then the other piece of the fragment exited towards the back of the head, and mostly was the lead on the bullet. That's the one that hit the wall, creating mark G on the wall.
Now, when that bullet hit the deceased in the head, where did the head go to?
My lady, I'm of opinion that after this wound was inflicted on the head, she dropped immediately. She's in a seated position on top of the magazine rack, and dropping, she just dropped to the right-hand side, whereby the head ended up on top of the toilet seat, and the upper body was between the toilet seat and the magazine, whereby the lower part of the body was still positioned on top of the magazine rack.
Now, Captain, you also then investigated the door for the presence of propellant particles. Am I correct?
That's correct, my lady. I examined the door for the presence of propellant particles to determine the distance at which the shot was fired at. Now, I bought 3 doors, the same type of doors, but the only difference was the length of the height of the doors. They were a bit shorter than this one. This is the length is a bit longer than the normal doors. And I shot tests on those doors. Now, started at a distance of 10 centimeters from the door, using the same type of ammunition that was used there, black talons. Now, at the distance of 10 centimeters, when a shot is fired, the propellant powder inside the cartridge is ignited and starts to burn, creating gas. Now, that gas pushes the bullet. Now, not all the propellant powder particles is completely burned, and some of it is not burned at all. So the partially burned and the unburned propellant powder particles travels through the barrel of the firearm and exit at the muzzle of the barrel. Now, that propellant band, the unburned and partially burned propellant powder particles can travel for a distance of about 1 meter. Now, within that range, it will be embedded. It's either if a human being is not wearing anything, we call it tattooing around the wound, when this propellant powder penetrates the skin. Now, in this instance, what I did is I fired shots, and I looked at the door. I could see the presence of the propellant powder on the door at the distance of 10 centimeters. And then I increased the distance to 20 centimeters. I increased it to 40 centimeters, to 60 centimeters. Now, what I could determine on the door is, after firing the shots at the distance of 60 centimeters, the propellant powder particles is still present on the door, and it's partially embedded into the door. When you run your finger on the door, you can still feel it that there's propellant powder on the door. Now, at the range of 100 centimeters, meaning a meter, I couldn't find the propellant powder particles on the door. Now, to be safe on this, I could not say the shots were fired at the range of a meter or bigger than that. I said at least at the range of the muzzle of the firearm being at least not less than 60 centimeters from the door. So the shot could have been fired from any distance where the muzzle of the firearm would have 60 centimeters away from the door to was the wall.
That would indicate the distance that the firearm was from the door.
It indicates the distance of the firearm from the door.
And you were able to determine the trajectory of at least B.
That's correct, my lady. With B, I could determine the trajectory. Now, if you look at photo number, where I used the laser, if we look at photo number 440, photo number 31 on the report, and photo number 32. Let's look at photo number 32, 441. If we look at this photo, my lady, this bullet went through the door, a bullet hole marked B, and it also hit the wall inside the toilet. Now, in the case of the other shots, they only penetrated the door, but there's no bullet mark inside. So it's difficult to determine the exact trajectory of the bullet. For you to determine the exact the trajectory of the bullet, you had to get at least 2 points. Then your trajectory will be between those 2 points, and you can extend it. You'll get the angle, and you can get the proper trajectory of the bullet.
If we just deal with B, and we ask a question, how far from that door the accused was when he fired B, what would your answer be?
My lady, I cannot say the exact distance, how far was there. When I was doing the test, I placed the tripod at a distance of about the distance of 220 meters from the 220 centimeters from the door. That's where I placed the laser. Now the distance can be further until towards the door, until towards the wall. So, meaning that he could have been anywhere between the passage, wall, and where the firearm muzzle would be about 60 centimeters from the door.
Okay. So it's further than 60, and if he goes back further, he will be against the wall.
You will be against the wall, that's correct, Malini. And to be against the wall is around approximately 3 meters from the door.
Then, Captain, if we can deal with the ejection of the spent cartridges.
My lady, I looked at the position of the fire cartridge cases at the crime scene, and I wanted to determine the possibility of I wanted to see if I can be able to determine the position. How did the position of the cartridge cases ended up where they were found at the scene? I took the same firearm. The problem is we didn't have enough of those black talon ammunition because the production of ammunition was stopped long ago. So most of the gun shops don't have the ammunition in them. So I used black talons, and I've also included the PMP ammunition, the full metal jacket 9mm ammunition. Now I fired several shots with it, looking at the ejection of the cartridge cases. By ejection, I mean when you fire a shot, the fire cartridge case is ejected out of the firearm and thrown out. I looked at the pattern of the ejection of the cartridge cases. It was not consistent, whereby if you are standing and firing shots from the same position, all your cartridge cases will fall to the same direction. Some of the cartridge cases fell at the angle of about 45 degrees. Some of them at an angle of about 90 degrees. Some of them even fell behind me at the scene. So I couldn't determine the exact ejection of the fire cartridge cases. And the other thing is the position of the cartridge cases at the crime scenes. At some stage or at some instances can be misleading because there was movement at the crime scene. So people could have moved or kicked the cartridge cases around the crime scene.
So as far as the position of the cartridge cases is concerned, you made no finding on that?
That's correct, my lady.
Then, if we deal with the fact that the bullet went through an object, a door, before it hit the deceased and or the wall.
That's correct, my lady.
Did you determine or attempted to determine bullet deflection?
That's correct, my lady. We've got a high-speed camera at the lab that we use to conduct the test. We use the high-speed camera, whereby it can take a single bullet for the number of photos while in motion. You can see the movement of a bullet, if it's yawing or if it's constant. Now I use that to determine that, and we also use the headland to see if there's any deflection of the bullets. Now I've had several shots on the doors that I bought, and from those shots fired, when looking at the deflection of the bullets, some of the tests that I fired, there was no deflection of it. The biggest deflection that I could get was about 3 degrees from the trajectory, and of which 3 degrees is very minimum.
Now, when you tested the deflection, what kind of ammunition did you use?
The deflection on this, I used the black talon ammunition, my lady.
Now, on the high-speed camera, could you ascertain if that black talon rounds broke up when they passed through the doors?
My lady, with the black talon ammunition, the reaction of the bullet is only when it hits a moist target. If it hits an hard object, it does not break up, it doesn't open up. But if it hits a moist or target like human flesh, it automatically opens up.
We'll get to that. So let us deal with the type of ammunition that was used. You did some research on black talon.
That's correct, my lady. The ammunition that was used was the black talon ammunition. Now with this type of ammunition, my lady, you get maximum wounding from this type of ammunition. But the advantage of it is if it hits a target, it loses all the speed or most of its speed on the target. So the chances of the bullet perforating and hitting another person at the back are very slim. It's unlike when you compare it with a normal full metal jacket ammunition like the one that I'm having now. This is we call it the ball ammunition, the FM full metal jacket ammunition. With this bullet, if a shot is fired, it's possible that this bullet can hit more than one target when traveling. Now with this black talon, what happens is when a shot is fired, it opens up when it hits the target.
Before you carry on, if you say target, the door is a target, and it hits the door, it did not open up.
No, when it hits
what are you referring to as target?
Target, I'll refer to human being, my lady. If it hits a human being or it opens up, I'll show the court this is type of how it opens up when it hits. Now these are the 2 bullets that are fired in a water tank. This is how it reacts when it hits.
So you took photographs
I took the photographs of the
bullets that you fired yourself into a water tank, and those are the results.
That's correct, my lady.
And
so if it opens up in this fashion, what happens is it hits a target, it opens up, it creates 6 talons, and these talons are sharp. Now when it penetrates, because it's in a spinning motion, it cuts through the organs of a human being. And that's when it loses most of its speed and its energy. And in most cases, if it hits a hard object inside, like a bone, it breaks into fragments. In most cases, that's why if you look at the exhibits at the crime scene, most of the exhibits at the crime scene were only fragments.
And did that explain the exit wound on the arm as far as you're concerned?
That's correct, my lady.
Now, Captain, let us deal with the question of Mr. Pistorius having been on his prosthetic legs and or on his stumps. And that is in paragraph 18.7 of your report.
My lady, when using the laser in determining the trajectory, I've measured the height where the laser was, which is in line with the trajectories direct into the bullet hole mark B and into the wall. Now at the distance of 2.2 meters, the height was about 130 centimeters, or 1.3 meters. Now at this height, what I did is I wanted the measurements of the accused. Now with the accused, if he's wearing the prosthesis, the shoulder level is around 155 centimeters. Now in height of 155 centimeters, holding the firearm straight, it's too high for the trajectory. Now if you get the accused without the prosthesis, stretching the arms, the shoulder level, it's around 123 centimeters, 1.23 meters. Now at this, it's close to the trajectory that I found when placing the laser. Now if we place him around that area with the firearm pointing at the door, the only difference between where the laser was and the height of the shoulder is about 7 centimeters. Now the 7 centimeters can be compensated by the slide of the firearm. If he's holding the firearm, he's holding the grip of the firearm, he's not holding the slide. The slide is at the top of the firearm. Now the slide can compensate the 7 centimeters, and the other thing is when you're shooting, you align your sides of the firearm with your eyes. You are not shooting from this like elbow. You're actually raising your firearm a bit to align the sides of your firearm with your eyes. Now that can compensate the 7 centimeters. And if the accused is wearing the prosthesis, shooting at that same position, we look at the elbow height. With the elbow height is 126 centimeters. Now at 126, the difference is about 4 centimeters. Now it will depend on where the firearm is held. He can shoot with the prosthesis at this position, holding the firearm. You get the same length or the same height. Now when you do reconstruction, my lady, we look at the 3 possibilities or the 3 positions. We look at the probable position, which is the most possible position, and we look at the possible position but awkward, and we look at the impossible position. If I can explain that, I'll say that if shooting without the prosthesis, holding the firearm, this is the most probable position that you could have shot. Now shooting with the prosthesis, holding the firearm, it's possible, but it's an awkward position. The impossible position, I'll say that shooting while lying on the ground, holding the firearm in this position, to reach that height is going to be impossible.
Captain, I just have to now explain what you did, try and put in words what you just showed. You indicated, and I think that's on the record, that the most probable position is without the prosthesis in a normal firing position.
That's correct, my lady.
The improbable position is on the prosthesis, having the firearm in his hand, shooting from his hip.
From the shoulder, that's correct, my lady.
From the hip.
That's correct, ma'am.
And the last impossible position, you've indicated being on the floor, shooting at the door, lying flat.
That's correct, my lady.
Then, Captain, you then describe the best possible and probable explanation in paragraph 19 of your report. Would you just read that into the record?
Right, paragraph 19, my lady. I said, taking the aforementioned evidence into context, the best possible and probable explanation are as follows. The deceased was initially in an upright behind the closed door inside the toilet area. She sustained a penetrating wound on the right side of the hip. She then assumed an intermediate seated or semi-seated position where she then received further wounds and then assumed the position next to the toilet seat. The first shot hit her while she was in a standing position, and then she changed position. She seated on the top of the toilet magazine where she sustained the other 2 or the other 3 wounds, including the one on the right left end, and then she ended up with her head on top of the toilet seat.
And in the last sentence you indicated
with the last sentence I said the shooter was most likely not wearing the prosthesis legs and fired from a distance greater than 60 centimeters.
Now, Captain, let's deal with 2 other aspects. Have you had an opportunity to study a Glock pistol?
That's correct, my lady. I studied the Glock pistol, my lady.
Could you just explain to the court the safety mechanisms of a Glock 27?
My lady, with the Glock pistols, we've got different types of or models of Glock pistols, and they come in different calibers. It's 9. You can get it in 9mm. You can get it in 40 Smith & Wesson. You can get it in 4.45 ACP. Now, the mechanism, the working mechanism of all those Glock systems are the same. It does not have the thumb safety, or you can put it on safe or on fire, but it has what we call the trigger safety. And the safety mechanisms of the Glock pistol are 3, and they work automatically. Now, with the trigger safety, what happens is when you pull the trigger, you have to pull it to the center where the trigger safety is positioned. If you don't pull it on, maybe you pull it on the side or the top, the trigger will not move. The trigger safety will keep it in position. You have to deactivate the trigger safety first for the trigger to move backward. Now, when the trigger safety is deactivated or is activated, it automatically activates what you call the firing pin lock. Now, the firing pin lock is activated while if the trigger is not pulled, it prevents the firing pin to move forward. Now, when the trigger is pulled with the trigger safety, what happens is it goes a little bit up, giving the firing pin space to move. And at the same time, when you pull the trigger, it deactivates the trigger safety at the back, whereby the trigger, the firing pin, it deactivates the firing pin safety at the back, whereby the firing pin will be able to move forward. So if you don't pull the trigger on the trigger safety, the firing pin lock will remain there, and the firing pin safety at the back will keep the firing pin at the back. So meaning that if you don't pull the trigger, this firearm will not be able to fire a shot or discharge ammunition.
Now, is it possible, I've heard you said, I just want to share another scenario with you. If you would just cock that firearm without pulling the trigger, will that fire?
If you cock the firearm without pulling the trigger, it will not discharge ammunition. And if you cock the firearm, pressing the trigger, as long as the slide is still open, it will not fire the trigger. The slide has to be closed first, and if it closes the slide, then you release the trigger and pull it again, it will discharge ammunition.
Then, Captain, we read evidence about a shot being fired through the sunroof of a car into the air. Is that dangerous?
My lady, firing a shot into the air, it's dangerous and it's lethal. It all depends on how you hold your firearm. You can hold your firearm, firing a shot at 90 degrees, where your firearm, the bullet travels at 90 degrees. What happened in this instance is the bullet leaves the barrel at the speed of between 350 to 280 meters per second, traveling upwards. That's force of gravity acting against the bullet, and there's wind deflection acting against the bullet. The bullet will travel upward, up to a point where it will stop, and then it comes back. When it comes back, now it's force of gravity pulling it downwards. At one stage, the wind deflection is going to balance the speed of the bullet. Now, you will find that at one stage, the bullet will be traveling at the speed of, if it's a 9mm bullet, that's way between 115 and 123 grains. The average speed of the bullet when it's coming down will be about 80, 81, 82 meters per second. Now, for a bullet to penetrate human body, you need about 50 meters per second, the speed required for a bullet to penetrate. Now, at that speed, if it's traveling over 80 meters per second, it will definitely penetrate human body, and it can cause danger or it can kill a person.
And if the angle is not exactly 90 degrees?
If the angle is not exactly 90 degrees, your bullet will be traveling in an oval shape, whereby the speed will be more than if it's traveling up and down, coming down straight at 90 degrees. And still, in that instance, the bullet can still kill a person.
Thank you, Malay. I have nothing further.
Yes, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, my lady. Captain, have you ever heard of the expression double tap?
Double tap. That's correct, my lady.
What is that?
With a double tap, meaning you pull in the trigger twice, my lady.
And the speed of that?
It depends on how fast you are.
How fast can you go?
That's correct, my lady.
How fast can you go?
How fast can I go? My lady, I shoot competition. I can do much better than somebody who doesn't shoot competition.
Can you do this?
I can do that.
Yes. Just to demonstrate to the court, it was 4 quick sounds in quick succession. It was rapid. You agree? The sounds that I've just made to you.
That's correct.
Just doof, 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 doof.
That's correct.
It's rapid.
That's correct, my lady.
Now, that is the version of the accused. It was 2 double taps.
2 double taps. My lady, I tend to disagree with that.
Why is that?
My lady, we look at the wound sustained by the deceased. If it's 2 double taps, she's in a standing position. I would expect both wounds to be here. The first double tap, if it's double tap and then double tap, then all the wounds will be here on this position.
Well,
There won't be any chance for the deceased to change position in that instance. It's impossible.
well, let's look at Dr. Stipp's evidence. Doof, doof, doof. That's now eyewitness. Doof, doof, doof. So we don't have to believe the accused. We have a version by Dr. Stipp. Doof, doof, doof. Quick succession, and he explained it as quick succession.
My lady, I still tend to
Yeah.
differ that it can happen, the doof, 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 when referring to the second, the third, and the fourth shots. But with the first shot, what I can explain is between the first shot and the second shot, there's a break. I cannot determine how long is the break, but there's definitely a break between the first shot and the second shot.
Wow.
How do I determine the break is by looking at the wound sustained by the deceased. The wound is inflicted here. The deceased changed position from a standing position to a seated position on top of the magazine rail. That creates a break in between the first shot and the other shot. And then the rest of the 3 shots is whereby the deceased is in a seated position. Then I cannot tell if there's a break. Then it's possible for the other 3 shots to be that doof, doof, doof.
Well, let's look at it. Where did... On the right arm, you saw secondary wounds to the deceased, caused by, according to Dr. Simon, Professor Simon, wooden splinters.
That's correct, my lady. We call them the secondary missiles. It's when the bullet perforates the door. It creates those small splinters or pieces of wood from the door being pushed towards the direction of the target. Now, when they hit the target, because of their shape, if they're sharp, they'll create secondary wounds on the around the main wound sustained by the deceased.
Where did you see those secondary wounds?
I saw them on the
Which side of the body? The right side.
on the right side of the arm, my lady.
What does that indicate to you? Which side was facing the door?
This is the side that was facing the door, my lady.
The right side.
It's on the side of the entrance, my lady.
So the right side's facing the door. When you look at the hip wound, will you agree that there's a collar of abrasion on top? It's more marked. It shows it's not a direct shot, a straight shot.
It's more.
It is not a straight shot. It's a shot that's not straight. There's a collar of abrasion on top, on the upper body part.
My lady, the bullet hit the door first. That could be the cause of that. It's unlike when it's a direct shot that is hit towards a person. It hits the door. When it hits the door is going to cause it's either deflection on that or unstableness on the bullet. So the collar of abrasion being at the top, I understand that because it went through the door first. If it was a direct shot whereby it didn't hit the door, it went through, then it would be a question mark also to me.
Yes, you get two situations in your test. Sometimes with your test done, it with no deflection. Sometimes there will be deflection, but little.
That's correct, my lady.
So if there was no deflection, that would be consistent with the person slightly leaning on the hip to make the collar of vibration on top.
My lady, I still don't disagree with that. It doesn't mean if there's no deflection, it means the bullet is still stable. It went through, but it can be starting to wobble. It's not exactly rotating smoothly, but it wobbles because it went through the first target.
We know we have a circular wound there with a collar of vibration on top. It can be one of two things. It can be deflection, or it can be a body position that's not standing up straight, but leaning. It's one of the two.
Leaning, my lady, leaning, I don't understand
Forward.
the word leaning.
If you're leaning, bending forward. That would also be, all I'm saying, it can be the one, or it can be the other one.
It
Bending
can be,
forward.
but we must look at the wound.
Could you
It
just
can
respond to the first
be.
one?
It can be, but we must look at the other thing, that she's also wearing the shot on top. That bullet went through the shot first.
Yes.
So that can also have an effect on the
Of course it
wound.
can be. It can be the one or it can be the other. I'm not saying it can't be the first one. I said it can be the one or it can be the second one.
That's correct, my lady.
Yes. Have you taken steps to test the wound at the back? You know what you spoke about, the ricochet bullet that hit the deceased at the back. Did you test that? Did you go to photographs, blow it up to find striations?
Yes, I did that, my lady. I could see the striations on that thing.
Where did you test the magazine rack to see if it is consistent with
With
the
the
striations?
magazine rack.
The magazine rack in the toilet.
My lady, which part of the magazine rack could have caused that? I don't get it. I won't get it.
Did you test the magazine rack to see if it was consistent with the striations?
No, my
on the
lady.
back?
And I tend to disagree that it cannot be a magazine rack. The magazine rack is big now. How can that small wound be caused by the
If you say the magazine, what is the handle on top?
It's
Okay.
wood.
And how does it look?
It's
How big
not
is
flat,
it?
it's not straight, but if it comes into contact with the body, that round shape, it's not only that it's going to be the small part that comes into contact with the body, it's going to be a bigger part that comes into contact with the body.
I'm not going to be in a long debate. The experts, on behalf of the defense, have tested, they've found the striations, compared it to the magazine rack, and found them to be consistent.
I tend to disagree with that, man.
Yes, but you haven't
If-
tested it.
If that's the test that they can give me the test and I can look at the test and I can confirm that, man.
Have you tested it?
If apparently what the defense saying, the witnesses tested that, then they can bring the test, I can look at the test. If it's possible, then I can confirm to that.
You're welcome, Captain Magena, to go and test it, and of course to come back. Of course to come back and give evidence, because that test was done and found to be consistent with the falling on the magazine rack.
I disagree on that, Malik.
But you haven't done the test.
But I disagree with that.
Yes, of course. Now, in the event that the right of the body is where, and it, because one possible position is leaning forward, where would the head be?
Where would the head be?
Yes. If it's leaning forward, that's one possible position. Where would the deceased head be?
If it's leaning, the deceased head will still be in the front.
Yeah, and lower down.
But lower down up to which angle, Malik?
After the first shot, if it goes more down, what would happen?
Go down. My lady, if
Lower down.
it can come down,
Yes.
but I don't know up to which angle, up to which height.
We don't know, because what I will put to you, and that is what the experts will say, in this short space of time, it is not reliable to determine that the second shot missed and not the first shot missed. Which shot hit first? It's probable. All we know is probable that the right side of the deceased was facing the door, because we see the splinters, the secondary wounds. From there
My
on,
lady,
it's difficult.
I disagree with that. I'm saying the deceased was facing, not the right side of the deceased was facing the door. I disagree with that, my lady.
How far would their arm have been from the door to cause all these secondary marks on the arm? Could you give me a distance?
I couldn't get the distance and I didn't test that. If you want me to do that, I can go and do that.
Yes, I would.
My lady, it doesn't mean it has to be very close to the door. Even at the distance of 30, 40 centimeters, it can still happen. At the distance, depends on how fast those splinters were. And if you look at the deceased, she was wearing a sleeveless vest. So it's easier for those splinters to hit her on the arm.
Have you tested that?
I didn't test that. But based on my experience, Malik, I
Yes.
did a lot of crime scenes. I did a lot of cases
Yes.
where I could find something like that. You can find splinters on the door. You can find such splinters on the glasses, even on fiber. You can get something like that.
Well, to give you the opportunity, you haven't done the test. If you want to go and do it, it will be the evidence of the ballistic experts that the right arm was in close proximity of the door.
Malik, that can be their version.
Can you say it's not true?
I disagree with it
Why?
because that's not what I found. I tried it, but I couldn't find it.
But you didn't try it because you didn't test for the splinters. You didn't test to see if the right arm was close to the door, or did you?
I didn't test that, but my experience
Yes.
tells me that I have seen a lot of crime scenes. I did a lot of cases whereby I've looked at such things, and I know about these
I
things.
understand, Captain, that you've done a lot of crime scenes, and so did they. I'm asking you something else. That will be their evidence. Have you tested to see the effect of wooden splinters and determine the proximity of a right arm from the door?
My lady,
Have you done that?
No, I didn't do that. And my lady, if they did a test on that, I'll tend to disagree on that. In that position, I'm of the opinion it's more than one shot. Those splinters are not only here. If you can look at the arm also, there's also some marks from the splinters. Now, these ones on this lower arm, where do they come from? If she was in this position and the bullet came, then does it mean she was in this position? But the thumb has to be in front of the body when these splinters, and the closer you get to that, the more groupings of those splinters will be. The further away you move from the door, the more spreading they start to open up.
Have you measured the spread of the splinters?
I didn't measure the spread of it.
Now, if you have time and then come back, if you could measure the position of the splinters and do a test in relation to the door, and also do it on a magazine rack, that would greatly assist. Could you do that? And then come back whenever. Will you do that for us, Captain?
My lady, I don't think I can do that now.
Yes. Now, I think that your evidence was in accordance with the further particulars that the accused, Mr. Pistorius, would have been any distance from 60 centimeters to the back of the wall of the bathroom when he fired the shots.
My lady, the muzzle of the firearm would have been
Yes.
at the distance of not less than 60 centimeters from the door and further away
Well,
from
we know, more correctly put, it would be less than 100. Because you measured 60, you found, and the next one that you measured was 100, and you did not find. So it could be anything between 60 and 100.
not 60 and 100. Even if at more than 100, there wouldn't be any propellant power on the target, my lady.
Captain, let me repeat the question. You measured that, you tested at 60,
That's correct, my lady.
and you tested at 100.
That's correct, my lady.
At 60 you found, and at 100 you did not find.
That's correct, my
Propellant.
lady.
What was the position at 90?
My lady, I didn't measure at 90.
That's why I say, to say only 60 would not be correct. It could also be any distance from 90 centimeters to the back of
But
the wall.
90 centimeters still, my lady, it's just after 60. So it doesn't make any difference. I said any distance, not less than 60. So 90 is more than 60.
I understand that, Captain, I understand it. It's the accused version that he was with his back at the back wall when he fired the shots. Can you say that's not true?
That is possible, my lady.
Yes. And that he was standing on his stumps? You say that's probable.
That's probable, my lady.
And if we look at the position where he said that he fired from, we know 2 further factors. And I understand the movement, but we'll get to that. That we found gunshot residue at the light switch where that wall is close to the back wall. Do you know about that?
Yes, my lady, I know about it.
That would be consistent with his position, firing from that position. Not saying it's absolute, it's just consistent.
My lady, with a primer residue test, it cannot be conclusive that he was exactly at that point. Those primer residue can be like dust, they can go up, they can land anywhere. So it can be possible that only one shot was fired from there and it tested that the rest would be somewhere.
Yes.
But that cannot be a conclusive finding that he was at that point.
I understand that I'm using a different word. It's consistent with. It's not inconsistent with. It's consistent with.
That's correct, my lady.
Yeah. If you look at a cartridge case in the passage, that is consistent with ejecting to the right with the wall flying into the passage. That's consistent with
That's
where his
correct,
position was.
That's
That's all
correct.
I'm saying. And it's very hard to kick it from inside the bathroom all the way. We tried to do it, but of course it's possible if you good kicker, but a number of kicks. It's all I'm saying. It's consistent with his version.
That's correct, my lady.
The second cartridge would be that's also in that passage would be the entrance to the bathroom would be consistent with his version.
That's correct, my lady.
But we understand movement that could make it difficult to find an exact science there. That I understand. I'm just talking about consistency. Now, I need to understand and maybe borrow a bit from your expertise. When you become involved in the case, you would go to photos, you would go to the scene, you would go to the post-mortem, because in order to try and gather as much as possible facts, objective facts, not so.
That's correct, my lady.
That you have access to any forensic reports at that time, ballistic reports on shots?
On the shots?
Yeah, on the shots fired.
No, my lady.
Were there any?
About the same
By
case?
other experts, yeah, ballistic experts before you became involved?
That's correct, my lady.
Were there any reports?
There was no report, my lady. If there was a report that I used, I would have mentioned it in my...
Yes, I understand that, Captain. Because what I'm trying to find out is at the bail application, there was evidence that the accused, Mr. Pistorius, was standing 1.5 meters from the toilet door when he fired the shots. Where does that come from? Or where
I
did
have
it
no
come-
idea about that, my lady.
There was also, unless it was made up in order to constitute premeditated murder. Let's go to the second one. That he was standing on his prosthetic legs or on his prosthesis. Where did that come from?
I have no idea, my lady.
If your hands on your head or very close to your head, your left hand, would you expect to see bone and bullet fragmentation, secondary marks caused by bullet and bone fragmentation?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yes, when you put your hand close to your head, your left hand, close to the entrance and exit wound on the head, would you expect secondary injuries to the hand caused by bone and bullet fragmentation?
Bone and bullet fragmentation coming from? The wound on the head, or
Wound on the head.
On the head.
Yes. We know there was splintering of the bone, the skull there. That we know. We've seen that. If it was in close proximity to that wound, would you expect to see that? Secondary injuries caused by bullet and bone fragmentation.
Where would the wound be, Malik? I don't understand.
On the
question.
hand. On that hand close to the head.
On the hand.
Yes.
If the
Inside
bullet
the hand.
perforate the hand first or perforate the head, I don't understand.
Doesn't matter. If the hand was close to the head wound,
No, then where will the secondary wounds be?
would you expect to find secondary wounds to the inside of the hand? If the inside of the hand was towards the head wound, would you expect to find secondary wounds caused by the bone fragmentation and bullet fragmentation?
Meaning the secondary wound on the arm, on the hand
No,
itself.
coming from the head.
Malik, I don't understand the question.
Let me repeat it. Have you seen the entrance and exit wound?
Of
On
the
the head.
deceased, yes, ma'am.
Have you seen there was bone replacement?
There was bone replacement.
Yes. There's an open hole, there's bone missing.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes. And the bullet fragmented.
That's
upon
correct,
impact.
Malik.
Now, if the hand was close to the head,
If the hand was close to
yes,
the, yes,
the left hand,
yes,
what would you have expected on the inside of the hand that was closest to the skull?
of the hand.
Yes. What would have happened to these fragments, the bone fragments and the bullet fragments?
My lady, I wouldn't expect anything.
Why not?
The bullet is traveling to that direction, towards the back. Now, I can't expect the fragments to be to the opposite direction of the bullet. It's
Now,
impossible.
if the hand was in the proximate, immediate position of the head wound, if the hand was there, what would you have expected?
If the hand was at the back, then I would expect that. But not if the hand was in
Like
front.
this?
I wouldn't expect
I
that.
show you, illustrate, I put my hand there, it goes through the finger. What would you expect? Nothing.
Unless if you're talking about blood, then you can expect the back spatter from blood, whereby blood coming from the wound being spattered towards the back of the hand, but not the bullet fragment or not the bone fragments. I disagree with that.
An entrance wound,
Entrance wound on?
there's an entrance and an exit on the head.
That's correct, ma'am.
Yes, what would happen to the bones in the entrance wound?
What will happen today?
What would happen to the bone fragments? Where would they go?
From the entrance wound,
Yes.
they'll go inside the wound, Malik.
Only inside, not outside?
Not outside, inside.
And the exit?
The exit will go outside at the back. Now, they will create what you call beveling. The beveling, if it's in here
Yes.
and outside, beveling will be inside the head, and then the exit, the beveling will be outside the head
How-
towards the back.
How far must the hand be from the head to cause any injury to the hand caused by fragments? How far must it be from that wound, the exit wound?
My lady, if the hand is in front of the head, there won't be any wound caused on the head by the.
Not in front of, at the wound, at the proximate position of the wound.
My lady, I don't understand the question.
If I put my hand in a proximate position of the wound,
Yes.
where would the fragments hit the hand?
Which fragment? The bone fragment. There won't be fragment coming back to the wound.
There won't be.
There won't be. I've never seen that in my entire career, my lady.
Have you done tests to determine the comparison between the similarity of sounds caused by a cricket bat on this door, on a Meranti door, and the firearm?
No, my lady.
You must have heard the version that the door was hit with a cricket bat and that it was shot through.
I know, my lady, that the door was hit with a cricket bat.
You were not asked to do any test to see if one sound could resemble the other.
No, my lady, I don't specialize in sounds, and I won't be able to differentiate the sound.
Lee, may I just ask for a 5 minutes? There's one aspect that I want to clear with Mr. Oldridge. Just a 5-minute adjournment.
5 minutes.
Only 5 minutes.
We'll adjourn for 5 minutes. Yes, Mr.
Thank you for
Lee.
the indulgence, my lady. Captain, the two experts on behalf of the defence will give evidence, first of all, that the right arm was in close proximity to the door when the shots were being fired, which would account for the location of the secondary wounds on the right arm caused by the splinters. What do you say to that?
My lady, that will be of their version of the incident,
Yes.
but that I couldn't determine.
They will also say that on probabilities, and let me first preface this, that you cannot reliably determine the sequence of the shots, but on probabilities, when the hip shot, the shot to the hip was sustained, that the deceased was in a leaning position to explain the top part, the collar of abrasion. She was leaning forward to explain the collar of abrasion on the top part of the circular wound. You said in your evidence that can be, but you also have another explanation. It could be deflection or it could be a leaning. That's how I understood your evidence. Is that correct?
My lady, to my version, she was in a standing position, but I don't exclude the possibility of maybe leaning.
Of course, if the wounds at the back, the two wounds, if those were caused by falling onto the magazine rack and you haven't done the test, then your theory of the ricochet bullet and the position is wrong, if that is so.
My lady, I still tend to disagree with the
Yes.
magazine records in that room.
I understand. All I say is, of course, if it can be proven by the defense witnesses by means of tests done that you have not done, that those two wounds were caused by falling onto the magazine rack, the handle on top, then of course your theory on the sequence of shots are wrong and the body position. Because then it cannot be, it's not a ricochet against her when she was still up on a semi-seated position.
My lady, I still stick to my theory,
Yes.
to my version.
I understand that. And they will also say that you don't need one shot and then 3 shots to cause the injuries, that it is equally consistent with 4 shots on a double tap that would
My lady, I
account for
disagree.
every injury sustained.
I disagree with
Yes.
that, my lady. You will never get all 4 shots with a tap, whereby the shots are on different parts of the bodies.
You said in your statement that you could not determine which was the third and which was the fourth shot.
That's correct, my lady,
Yeah.
but in a seated position, on the same position.
Why? When do you say, and on what basis, that you say that the second shot missed and not the first or the fourth?
My lady, I looked at, I can't say it's the first shot, because if you look at my version, it missed her, hit the wall, and came back and hit her at the back. By then, she was seated on the.
Of
So
course,
if it's a first shot, then what would have happened? Does it mean it missed her and then she stand up?
and of course, if those wounds were caused by the magazine rack, then your theory would not be correct then.
My lady, I'm still saying I'm
Yes.
sticking to my theory. I won't change my theory. That's how
Yes.
I could determine the shots.
I have no further questions. Thank you, my lady.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Nell?
As the court pleases. Captain, the trajectory and the amount of shots, that's a constant.
That's correct, my lady.
You've explained that the position of the deceased, that can change.
The position of the deceased can change, my lady.
But what we have is we have A, B, C, and D.
That's correct, my lady.
A, B, C, and D caused the injury.
That's correct, my lady.
Now, if the deceased was leaning forward, let's take, as far as the hip wound is concerned, she's leaning forward. Where is she facing?
She must be facing the door, my lady.
Then, bullet O B, if she's leaning, standing, doing whatever she wants to. That shot did not hit her on the hip.
My lady, bullet hole mark B is too high for the hip.
Bullet hole C, that's too high for the hip as well.
Bullet hole C is still too high for the hip.
Even D is too high for the hip.
With bullet hole D, my lady, there can be doubt on that, but we must look at the position, how she was, because it's too close to the wall. Then she must be leaning towards the wall on that side.
Because if you open the door,
If you open the door, it's too close to the wall.
because let us just take D. If you open that door, to cause D, D must have been against the wall.
D must have been towards against the wall, my lady.
So, and on the accused version, leaning forward. But then we must find the wound that would have hit her in the shoulder, which doesn't make sense. Do you agree? On the defense version.
That's correct, my lady. I agree on that.
Good. But let us just go on. Let us look at photograph 54. Do you have it?
I have it, my lady.
You made it.
What page is that?
That is page
43.
Yes, ma'am. You've explained the injury to the forearm that one can see on this photograph.
That's correct, my lady.
So one can see on this photograph, and we don't have it on the screen, but on the forearm, red dots. Similar to that around the wound on the arm. Am I right? Can you see that?
That's correct, my lady. I can see that.
And your evidence is that the cause of those were the same.
That's correct, my lady. It's still the splinters from the door, my lady.
Then just have a look at slide 122 in album 1. I'm going to ask Mr. Moller to zoom into the top of that toilet basin. Right on top. There. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Go more to the left. Zoom in. What's on top of that? Can you see something on top? Do you see anything there? On top, next to the mechanism? The flush mechanism?
Meaning
There.
this, my lady.
What are those marks there?
My lady, I'm not sure, but that could be the wooden splints from the door also, my lady.
Yes. The other aspect, what we have, if we can go back to the captain's photographs, please. What we have is your explanation that where the tripod was, you could explain the height of the accused without his prosthesis firing into the door.
That's correct, my lady.
Now, every distance that you go back, that would have been higher because there's a 5 to 6 degree upwards angle from the door.
My lady, the more you move backward, the height increases a little bit. And the more you move forward, the height decreases a little bit.
Yes. Interesting aspect, Mr. Roux told you about Dr. Stipp's explanation of the shots. Let me give you another one. Michelle Berger, the first witness, said she heard the following: a shot, a pause, shot, shot, shot. Does that make sense?
My lady, that is possible. To have one shot and then the break and then the other 3 shots, it's possible, my lady.
Thank you, Melody. I have nothing further.
Let me just ask one question, if I may be allowed, on the hip that was raised in re-examination.
Please.
Just one. Captain Mangena, why would the height of the wound change, my hip position change, when I lean forward? Why would it go lower or higher? The hip. I'm not talking about the upper body. When I lean forward with my upper body, why would the height of my hip position change?
My lady, I have never said the height of the wound changes.
You were asked about the hip position in relation to the shots.
In relation to the shot, I'm looking at the height of the bullet hole mark B and bullet hole mark C.
Yes.
They are higher than bullet hole mark A.
But it would be exactly the same whether you're leaning forward or not.
It will not be the height on the hip will be the same, but on those bullet holes, it's not the same, my lady.
I understand, but the hip, the height of the hip wound would be the same whether you bend your upper body or not, whether you lean forward with the upper body or not. Why
That's
would
why
that change?
That's why I said, my lady, I've never said the height of the hip changes.
Now, lady, may I just put one fact that I've omitted to put, and I was reminded. You know that a spent projectile was found by the defense ballistics in the toilet and 2 fragments in the magazine rack, subsequent to the investigation by the police. Are you aware of that?
My lady, I'm aware of that.
Thank you, my lady.
Thank you.
I have nothing further.
Captain, thank you very much for your assistance. You may be excused.
Thank you, my lady.
Yes, the court, my lady, call as the next witness, Colonel van der Nest. Lady, before this witness is sworn in, we have to get the exhibits ready, and unfortunately, we displaced the photo album. Lady, that would take less than 5 minutes. If we can just make sure that we get that, and then swear in the witness and run from there. I apologize, my lady. I think we just left it now.
What do you need? Do you want an
5 minutes,
adjournment? Yes, 5 minutes.
Indeed.
We'll take our adjournment.
Ja, 5 minuten,